Thank you so much for joining, and I'm so excited for this because this has a lot to do with what I've been thinking for a very long time, and what I have been personally touched in the last over 2 years. And this is something that I've taken very professionally. And in the next 30 minutes, we are going to acknowledge the facts that we have been ignoring for a very long time. And if you are a speaker or a trainer or a coach or a transformational activist, or you are a parent or you are a friend, and you want to do something at a different level, you want to connect at a different level, you want to transform people at a different level. This 30 minutes is going to definitely help you understand where it happens, why it happens, and what is exactly expected from you, and what is exactly expected from the participant in order to create that lasting transformation. So here's where I am going to uh, share the screen. So this is an introduction session, just of 30 minutes about authentic influence. In the very first year when I got attracted towards public speaking, towards changing lives, it was about 1997, and I was listening and reading, and studying about Swami Vivekananda. When the one question that was really bugging in my mind was, how could this one person mesmerize thousands of people? How could this one person, without any kind of these trainings that we have had, really create this influence, and not even being at par with the quality of language that the Americans were expecting, but with a few simple words, with not that formal training, would go on to transform, influence life and on the over across the planet. And that took me these many years to understand, through my own exploration, through my own learnings, through my own wisdom, that I reached at after these many years. And I said, this is exactly what people need. This is exactly what we must be sharing. And this is exactly what is needed if you really want to transform people, if you really want to do something that has a lasting impact in the lives of people. Now, what we do in the next few sessions is, we'll be talking a little bit about me, and a little bit about you, and a little bit about authentic influence. And then we are going to dive deep into what creates authentic influence, and how is it possible for every one of us to do this in our own domains. Now, a little bit of me. As I said, I was inspired by Swami Vivekananda, and there are many number of people I came across. Now, amongst them, there were two categories of people: one who knew a lot, and one who just did something so differently that it impacted lives. And I was very curious about what exactly are these people doing, where they do so little and yet achieve so much. And when I talk about achievement, I'm not talking in terms of materialistic goals. I'm talking in terms of the kind of aura they create, the kind of influence they create, the kind of environment, the kind of ambience that they create around themselves the moment they are available there. And that's exactly what made me curious about this authentic influence. A little bit about you. Now, at some point you must have, if you are a seeker, if you are a change seeker, if you are a transformation seeker, if you really at some point dreamed about doing something for the society, then primarily what you exactly wanted to do was to change people so that they become their best selves. Now, when you want people to be their best selves, there is one deep understanding that you operate from. There is one deep aspiration that you operate from, and you want to do something which lasts forever for the person that you are talking with, for the audience that you are addressing. And if you have come into training and coaching, then probably you might have seen various kinds of trainers and speakers, but then some of them might definitely create that impact impact in you, and you would love to, you become curious about them. You see how do they do things differently? Where do they bring these things from? How do they manifest this into their life? And what do they do that they create that enigma around themselves? And a little bit about authentic self. Now, to take you into this journey of authentic self, I would want you to give a small definition that I understood about it, or I'm using at present. Maybe I'll not be using this forever, but then this is how I would like to present it. Authentic influence is impacting by creating conditions for people to operate from insights which are founded upon the wisdom coming from the being. It's take 30 seconds to read it, but this is what authentic influence is, if you can remember the essence of it. See, authentic influence is impacting. Of course, it's impacting by doing what? Not by acting upon them, but by creating conditions for people to operate from insights founded upon the wisdom coming from the being. Now, whose being am I talking about? I am talking about their being. And the one thing that we must always remember, if you are a speaker or a trainer, is that we can never plant insights into somebody's mind. We can only and only create conditions where the insights pop out of them, where the insights take birth in them. You cannot do something to plant. You can plant ideas, you can maybe plant thoughts, but you can never plant insights. And insights are what actually move people to change. Ideas can only inspire people, ideas can motivate people, but it is the insights which bring that transformation that you are wanting to see in them. And authentic influence is impacting by creating conditions, but not planting ideas, and not by just giving the action plans. Now, this is a small imagination. Imagine a seed. Imagine a seed in the ground, in the soil, having an out-of-the-body experience. For just a moment, imagine a seed is having an out-of-the-body experience. Its soul has come out, and the soul is looking at this body of the seed, and it's talking to itself or to the seed. There are two possible ways that the out of the experience will be. One, it will be talking in the first way, and that is, there are only two possible ways that the soul would be talking to this body of the seed, and that is, oh, you're so little with no promise for future. I see you have no promise for the future. The second is, what a magic you are. The first way is, there's nothing special about you, man. You're just in the soil, and you have such a small shape, which is not promising at all. The second method is, you are an expression of possibility. And one way is to say, you have no signs of life. You're already dead. There is no moment in you. The second one is saying that you are impregnated with life. You're pregnant with life, and you are going to give life. And the third, and one of the other ways is saying, you're buried. You're already buried. The second way, the opposite way of saying is, you are taken care of. You're being nurtured. You are in the right place. And imagine, these are the two possible ways that the out of the body experience of this seed can do. Now, all the people that you will come across in life will fall into one of these categories. Either they are on the first side, or they are on the second side. And most of them will be on the first side. A very rare few will come on the second side. Imagine. Now, there are possibly, even if they are on the second side of the rung of the ladder, but chances are there that they have reached their upper limit, and they are wanting to break that barrier and still go ahead. So in some way, most of us, each one of us, will always at some point of life be on the first side. Now, when you look at in these two different ways, I will call the first way, I'll call the first way as the finished product syndrome, and the second way as the evolving process realization. People will either be treating themselves like a finished product, or they will be treating themselves like an evolving process. Now, this is a realization they get out of their wisdom. This is not an idea. This is not just a thought. It always can only be a realization. Now, when they are treating themselves like a finished product, they'll be operating with a fixed mindset. and opposite to the evolving process, which will be a growth mindset. For a very long time, we have been talking about what is a fixed mindset, what is a growth mindset. Let me tell you a few traits that can differentiate them. You know, when people start looking themselves from the outside in view, they'll be treating themselves like, they'll be very judgmental about themselves. They'll be attached to titles, they'll be attached to labels, they'll be always stuck between the wasness and will-be-ness. I was this, I was that, I wanted to do that, I wanted to do this. No, will-be-ness. I want to do that, I want to achieve that, I want to get certified, I want to do this. These are all the will-be-ness. Now there always will be a kind of victimhood in their circumstances. They'll always be talking, oh, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. And this is what I call as, a kind of narrative that they have built, which is always around what happened to me rather than what I did. Now, they're always focused on the limits. They're always focused on what is limiting me. And they're always floating on knowledge. They're always saying, I know this, I know this, I know this, I've read this, I've read this, I've read this, and I've done this. Now, when people are treating themselves like evolving process, they are realized about themselves. They are non-judgmental, they are detached mentally, they are available in the easiness, they are available only in the moment, and they're fully available to what's happening now and what's possible. And they become the master of choice than staying in the victimhood. And they talk about, they operate from the faith of possibilities than the limitations. And they are grounded in experience, not in knowledge. When somebody floats on knowledge, it's very easy. You call them pundits. Why? Because they know everything. And when you talk about somebody grounded in experience, you might come across a person who doesn't know your language, but when you stay in his presence, when you stay in her presence, you will feel the difference of life. And this is I want to bring it back once again. I shared it earlier also, and this is something I would like to call as the wheel of creation. Now, please understand that anybody sitting right in front of you, be it your participant, be it your client, be it your customer, has actually created a life. And this creation always, for everybody, happens in this wheel of creation. For this, you need a few basic things for the wheel of creation to happen. And what are they? Time, space, and matter, which in the combination of energy, momentum, and speed. At a certain energy level, with a certain momentum, at a certain speed, using the right combination of time, space, and matter is what the people have created, what they're experiencing right now in front of you. So if you're a speaker or a trainer or a coach, please understand that people sitting right in front of you have already manifested their wheel of creation. They have already created something with which they are sitting right in front of you. And how did they do it? Using the time, space, and matter, and based on the circumstances. But point number one that we should remember is that this wheel of creation again would have its origin in two things, and that are either comparison or inspiration. Now you need to understand where they are coming from. Are they coming? 99% of the times people come from their wheel of creation actually comes from comparison and not inspiration. Well, there are a bunch of people, there are thousands of people whose wheel of creation might be coming from inspiration, and yet it can be impacted. When the circle of wheel of creation comes from comparison, it is rooted in cutthroat competition. You want to beat somebody, you want to defeat somebody, you want to accept challenges, and you're just motivated by challenges, and you are actually operating in lackness, you are operating from insecurity, and finally you are already thinking about that unhappiness that you want to beat and you want to replace. Whereas when somebody's wheel of creation is founded in inspiration, they're always thinking of co-creation. They have faith in the abundance that is existing, and they are operating from a mindset of innate security, which is available to everybody on this planet. And they're not looking for personal satisfaction, they are looking for mutual fulfillment. And that is the beginning of your thinking of even creating authentic influence. Now, all this is well when it comes to philosophy. But when it comes to reality, the wheel of creation in action looks something like this, very simple. Now you can ask me, sir, how does this participant actually created the life that he is leading? And it is the only one way that anybody could have created the wheel of creation. And that is in these 4 steps: thinking, speaking, writing, and doing. These are the 4 ways somebody sitting right in front of you has actually manifested the kind of life they are experiencing. And this is a bullet point that we need to remember, that how do you see in order to understand what they see? See, unless you see what they see, you won't be able to help them see differently. This is the crux of the most important thing which we miss. Unless you see what they see, you won't be able to help them see differently. And if you have something on your mind, if you have your own agenda, probably you are missing what they see. And this is the prime quality that we should be able to come to grips with. Now, there are again only 2 ways of seeing. See, if somebody is sitting right in front of you, a client or a customer or a participant of your workshop, there are only something that you need to notice as they either think a certain way or they don't think a certain way. They either speak a certain way or they don't speak a certain way. They either write a certain way or they don't write a certain way, and they do things a certain way or they don't do things a certain way. It's as simple as that. Now, you can define them with thousands of books, but when you want to change somebody's life, if the intention is right, either this or that, they are on the one side and you want them to bring to the other side. Now the circle of creation, when it comes to the wheel of creation, is very simple. I would like to present this model called being. This is the model of being, where since I'm giving an overview of what this model of being is, whether you are a speaker or a trainer or a coach, these 5 elements would help you get grounded in authentic influence and give your participants that taste of transformation. And this is about bridging, enrolling, the inside out, no bullshitting, and grounding. Bridging. Whenever you go in front of the speaker or the audience, you know what you're doing? You are trying to look at the gaps, and you are trying to look at the learning gaps. You are trying to look at the training gaps. You are trying to look at the performance gaps. You are trying to look at what is bringing brought this gap between your participant and what he really actually wants to do. The biggest gap, I would actually say, is that the gap between you and your participant. That is the biggest gap that you should be thinking about. I would actually like to say that you are just one thought away from your participant. You are just one thought away from your participant. The moment you have a thought, you are away from your participant. And this is the most crucial time when you need to undo what you are doing in your mind and listen to what your participants are saying. And probably that is when you connect with your participant at a level where this participant is sitting right in front of you. Now, chances are there that they have a lot going in their minds. We understand that, but a single thought about your participant in your mind can distance you from your participant. The second stage is enrolling. When we become trainers, when we become speakers, we are told about engaging the audience. Now, something more important than engaging the audience is enrolling them into your training, enrolling them into your workshop. And when you do that, how do you do that? You qualify them. I would want to tell you that you can never be responsible for somebody's transformation. You can only be responsible to them. If you remember this one saying, probably you will understand what is the impact of enrolling. You cannot be responsible for somebody's transformation. You can only be responsible to them in order to help them see something that they must see and yet they are ignoring to see. But you cannot take the responsibility for them. And the activities, the decisions that you take, the kind of engagement that you do where you make them take responsibility for their own commitment is called enrolling. And when you go with the mindset of enrolling your participants into your workshop, You are freed from the burden. You are freed from the overwhelming nature of your mind, and you are no more confused about what's happening because you have enrolled them. You have made them take responsibility for the transformation they want to undergo. Now, the third thing is inside out. I can only say that, unless you make them look within, you will not be able to make space for them to make this lasting transformation, because insights happen only in them. Insights can happen in you, but you cannot transform this insight. You cannot transmit this influence, this insight to somebody. You can only make space. You can only make conditions where an insight comes out of, where an insight emerges out of your participant, and that is the one way where you can lead them towards transformation. No bullshitting. The fourth point of this model is no impressing and no imposing. The moment you try to impress them, let's say you are doing a 6-hour workshop, and in a 6-hour workshop, your 5-hour workshop is focused more on impressing them, in engaging them, impressing them, then probably you have lost them long back. And they might say, wow, what an engaging training. Wow, what a brilliant speaker. But you missed the point because they did not transform themselves. You missed the point because they didn't actually make space for the insightful transformation that could have been possible. And all this is possible because of the fifth point of this model, and that is grounding. Grounding is being grounded in your own understanding of how life functions, being grounded in your own experience. And that is from where you actually operate, and you share your experiences by being more of who you actually are than what you know. Now, when I take you into a little deeper, how is this possible? Now, I'll tell you, bridging is possible only when you understand what presence is and what clarity is. Unless you're available there in the moment without an agenda in your mind, that is when the gap between you and your participation is bridged. And when there is no gap between you and your participant, that is when you see what they see, and that is when you will be able to help them see what they are not seeing, or probably they are ignoring. And the second one is enrolling, where you qualify people into your influence. You bring them into your game voluntarily and not by imposing. The third one is inside out, where you talk about your presence and clarity along with authenticity. You are being true to your own self, and that is the one way you are communicating. And no bullshitting is about no impressing and no imposing. But when I tell you, I would want you to remember this. You are just one thought away from your participant. One thought. And imagine you carrying a 3 days agenda in your mind. Probably you will have lost the participant long ago. And enrolling is about, you can never be responsible for someone. You can only be responsible to someone. And inside out, the game is all about make space for them to look within, and you will have a leader born. And no bullshitting is about nullifying your lower self. See, nullifying your lower self and see what shows up, what's possible. There is a lot of possibility which is possible without even you doing something. And finally, understanding that grounding is all about being rooted in the understanding of how somebody creates an experience, and how these people sitting in front of you have created a certain kind of experiences which is making them look at life in a certain way. And that is possible by only demonstrating your committedness to staying true to your own self. How do you do that? Very simple. You create your own wheel of creation through your action, and it depends upon what you think about your participants, what you speak about your participants, what you write about your participants, and what you do in order to serve your participants. And when you understand that, probably you will have created a participant. Now, finally, there is something that I would want to share. How you show up in the moment. How you show up in the moment is more transformative than what you plan or do. This is something to take back and meditate upon. How you show up, how you exist, how you become available in the moment is more transformative than what you do or what you know. And who you are influences more than what you do, know or do or intend to do. These two things are such important things which can bring a shift in the way you operate, in the way you walk into your training hall, in the way you become available, in the way the participants engage with your presence and aura. Now, for that to happen, I will let me share a small experience. I was watching this movie, The Walk, and if you have seen this movie, I would, if you haven't seen, I would want you to watch this movie. This is a brilliant conversation that was happening between the hero, star of the movie, and his master. And his master was asking him to do a salute. He was asking him to do a salute to the audience, and he was overdoing it. He was just overdoing it. And when the master says, "Do nothing," he says, "Do nothing on the outside." This was brilliant part of this movie. He says, "Do nothing on the outside. On the inside, in your heart, you must salute." And this was very confusing to the hero. Because we don't do that. We are so much obsessed about body language. We are so much obsessed about what we do on the outside than what we do on the inside. And he says, on the inside, in your heart, you must salute. The question is, the hero says, "But why should I respect the audience? It is me on the wire." Of course it's you on the wire. Of course it's you are the speaker. Of course it's you who are the trainer. Of course it's you who are the coach. But you are not a coach, you are not a speaker, you are not a trainer unless and until you have a listener. Unless and until somebody who makes you a speaker. Unless and until somebody who gives you an opportunity to share your wisdom. And that's when the master says, well, unless you understand that, you will never perform in circus. And that's what a master is. And that's what exactly your inner master is, when you actually listen. And that's the essence of the entire authentic influence, where you say, just so if you remember, the one who is in front of you is an audience. Turning them a participant is an art. Everybody who sits in front of you is an audience. They are not your participant. And if you're obsessed about what my participants are going to think about me, please remember, you haven't even turned them a participant. And turning them a participant is the biggest form of transformation. And the moment an audience turns into your participant, you have done everything that was needed, because you have a leader born. This is one thing that I remember, where Pillay says, Pillay was very, very engaged, traveling from country to country. When somebody asked him, "When do you practice?" And he says, "Well, everything is practice." This is so brilliant. And somebody when asks me how to create this authentic influence, well, knowing all this, that now we know by thinking, speaking, writing, and doing. Of course we do that. But how do we do that? And the question is, they are actually asking me, when do we do and what do we do? And my answer to them will be, everything that you do is a practice. Whether you're talking to your spouse, whether you're talking to your friend, whether you're talking to your father, whether you're talking to your mother, whether you're talking to your participant, you're eating, you're sleeping, you're reading, you're playing, you're watching a movie. It's a practice. It's a practice of being true to your own self. And this is the same thing I watched in another movie, The Karate Kid, where the child asks Jackie Chan, "Well, what has my hanging the shirt has to do with my practice with Kung Fu?" And he says, everything that we do is Kung Fu. And that's a lesson that if we really want to move ahead into that next level of training, next level of speaking, next level of coaching, then probably we need to understand that everything is practice. Thank you so much for joining with me for these 30 beautiful minutes. And this, the last statement, which is true to me, what I have been living in last 2 years, is stay true, be you. And when you stay true to that you, to that higher self, probably transformation is permeating across through you, and universe is having its job done. And if you can remember that, the last 5 things I would want you to go back with. You are just one thought away from your participant. You can never be responsible for someone. You can only be responsible to someone. Make space for them to look within, and you will have a leaderboard. Nullify your lower self and see what shows up. There is a lot of possibility. And finally, grounding in who you are is more transformative than what you know. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. Thank you so much.
Wonderful session, sir.